Have you ever felt like your prayers are just echoing into silence? Like you're calling out to God over and over again, but the heavens remain quiet? You've done everything right. You've prayed, you've waited, you've believed, but nothing seems to change. If that's where you are right now, don't scroll away. Because what if I told you that God is listening, louder and clearer than you think? What if the silence you're hearing isn't absence, but preparation? Let me say this clearly. God is always at work, even when you can't feel it. Even when everything around you looks like it's falling apart. He is molding you, refining you, and guiding you towards something far greater than you can currently comprehend. But here's the real question. Are you ready to receive what He's preparing? Increased challenges and trials. There are moments in life when, instead of getting easier, everything seems to get harder. You start facing obstacles you didn't expect. The weight you're carrying suddenly feels heavier. Storm after storm hits your life with no warning, no mercy, and you find yourself asking, why is this happening? Why now? Why me? But what if I told you the hardships you're facing are not signs of abandonment? What if they're actually signs that something big is coming? When God is getting ready to bless you, He often allows challenges to test you, not to destroy you, but to prepare you. Because here's the truth most people don't want to hear. God is more concerned with your character than your comfort. He's not just handing out blessings like gifts at a party. He wants to make sure you're strong enough, mature enough, humble enough to carry the blessing without it crushing you. Think about it. Before God elevates you, He often tests your heart. He'll allow circumstances that stretch your faith, situations that push you to your limit. Not to punish you, but to strengthen your resolve. He is shaping the person you need to be in order to handle what you've been praying for. Let's look at a powerful example. Joseph. Joseph had a dream, a God-given vision of greatness. But before he ever saw that dream become reality, what happened? He was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused of crimes he didn't commit, forgotten in prison. Was that because God had abandoned him? Absolutely not. Every painful moment was part of the process. God was preparing Joseph, refining him through fire, so that when the time came, he could handle the weight of ruling a nation with wisdom, compassion, and humility. Had Joseph gone straight from the dream to the throne, he wouldn't have been ready. He had to be shaped by the struggle. And maybe, just maybe, that's what's happening to you right now. Maybe you're in a season where everything seems to be falling apart. You've been praying, you've been hoping, you've been holding on. But instead of a breakthrough, all you see is breakdown. And then the enemy whispers in your ear, if God really loved you, why would He let this happen? Why would He let you suffer? But let me tell you something the enemy doesn't want you to know. He only attacks what he fears. Your struggle is not a sign of being forgotten. It's evidence that you are being prepared, that you are dangerous to the enemy's plans. If there wasn't greatness inside of you, if there wasn't a powerful calling on your life, the enemy wouldn't even bother with you. God's strongest warriors are not formed in seasons of ease. They're forged in fire. They are made in the quiet, painful, hidden seasons. The seasons no one sees, no one celebrates. Think about David. Before he faced Goliath, he faced lions and bears in the wilderness. Think about Moses. Before he led an entire nation, he spent 40 years alone in the desert. Think about Jesus. Before he began his ministry, he was led into the wilderness to fast and face temptation for 40 days. So if you're walking through a wilderness right now, if life feels like a constant battle, don't lose hope. God may be strengthening you for something you can't yet see. Because pain has a purpose. It teaches endurance. It humbles us. It strips away pride and makes room for divine power. When life is easy, it's tempting to believe we're in control. We start to think we don't need God. But in the fire of trials, we discover something life-changing. God is our provider. God is our sustainer. God is our refuge. And when we feel like we've lost everything, that's often when we discover that He is enough. So let me ask you one final question. Are you in a storm right now because God is angry with you, or because He's preparing you for something greater than you've ever known? Hold on. Keep walking, because your story isn't over. In fact, the most powerful chapters may be just about to begin. So yes, the battles you're facing, they're not here to break you. They're here to build you, because sometimes the hardest moments in life are actually the stepping stones to your greatest breakthrough. The pain has purpose. Some of the most painful battles you're fighting right now, the ones that keep you up at night, the ones that make your heart ache, those may be the very things that are preparing you for the blessing that's coming next. Maybe you lost your job and you can't make sense of it. You gave your best and suddenly it was gone. No explanation, no closure. Or maybe a relationship you believed was forever suddenly ended, leaving you shattered and confused. Perhaps life just feels unfair. Everything seems to be moving forward for everyone else, while you're stuck, watching your world unravel. But what if, just what if, that loss is not the end? What if it's actually a setup for something better? What if the very pain you're feeling right now is pushing you closer to the exact place where God wants you to be? You see, the enemy wants to lock your eyes on the struggle. He wants you to believe that this is it, that it's over, that there's no way out. He'll whisper, "You won't make it through this one." But God's voice cuts through the noise. Hold on, I'm working. I'm strengthening you. I'm preparing you for something bigger than what you can see right now. Pressure that prepares, that pressure you're under, it's not meant to crush you. It's meant to position you. The fire you're walking through, it's not meant to burn you. It's meant to refine you. Imagine a piece of gold. To purify gold, it has to go through intense heat, so hot that the impurities begin to rise to the surface, and only then can the refiner skim them away. It's a painful, glowing, blistering process. But when it's over, that gold is purer, stronger, and more valuable than ever before. That's what God is doing with you. He's allowing the heat to bring to the surface what doesn't belong. The doubt, the fear, the pride. And He is refining you, making you stronger, wiser, more faithful, and ready. The challenge you think is unbearable right now might just be the very thing that equips you for the blessing that's coming. Sign number 2, a season of waiting. Now let's talk about something just as difficult as the fire, the waiting. Waiting is one of the hardest things we'll ever be asked to do, especially in today's world where everything is instant. Instant food, instant messages, instant gratification. We want results now. We want success yesterday. But God? God does not operate on our schedule. His timing is not our timing. His ways are not our ways. And more often than not, His timing requires us to wait. But don't misunderstand this. When God calls you into a season of waiting, it's not a punishment. It's preparation. Growth. You can't think of a seed planted deep in the soil. You can water it, give it sunlight, tend to it every day, but you still can't force it to break through the ground before it's time. Underneath the surface, where no one can see, roots are forming. Strength is being built. The seed is growing, even though it appears lifeless on the outside. Then, at the appointed time, it breaks through the soil and reaches toward the sun. That's what your waiting season is like. It may feel like nothing is happening. You may be praying, crying, trusting, and still seeing no sign of breakthrough. Meanwhile, others around you seem to be moving forward, receiving blessings, stepping into their purpose, and you're still standing in the same place. That's when doubt creeps in. That's when the enemy whispers, "God forgot about you. You're not good enough. Maybe your moment will never come." But those are lies. God has not forgotten you. He is never late. He is never behind. He knows exactly what he's doing, and the waiting is not wasted. Behind the scenes, even when you don't see anything happening, God is working. He's aligning people, timing, circumstances. He's preparing your heart, because when the blessing finally comes, you need to be ready to carry it. Sometimes we think we're ready, but God knows we're not. If He gave us the promise too soon, we might mishandle it. We might take it for granted. We might step into something we're not emotionally, spiritually, or mentally ready for. Real stories of waiting. Take David, for example. He was anointed as king when he was still a young shepherd boy, but he didn't step into the palace the next day. No, he had to wait. He had to endure battles. He had to face betrayal. He had to hide in caves. He had to grow into the man that could lead a nation. If David had stepped into the throne the moment he was anointed, he wouldn't have been ready. God used that waiting season to prepare him in the shadows. Or look at Abraham. God gave him a promise. He would become the father of many nations. But years went by, years, and there was still no son. Imagine the agony, the wondering, the temptation to give up. But God's promise did not fail. At the appointed time, not a moment too soon, not a second too late, Isaac was born. Closing thought. Waiting is hard. And when you're in the middle of it, it's so easy to look around and compare your journey to everyone else's, to wonder why God seems to be blessing them while you're still stuck. But you don't see what God sees. You don't see the doors He's preparing to open. You don't see the dangers He's protecting you from. You don't see the foundation He's building beneath your feet. So if you're in a season of waiting, take heart. You're not behind. You're not forgotten. You're just being prepared. Because when the time is right, your seed will break through the ground. And everything you've been waiting for will arrive, exactly on time. So yes, the waiting season is hard, quiet, hidden, and often misunderstood. But it's in the waiting that your faith is refined, your character is tested, and your trust in God is deepened. The quiet work within. You see, while you're waiting, God isn't idle. He's strengthening your faith, chiseling your character, and gently, yet firmly, teaching you to rely on Him completely. Waiting teaches patience, not the passive kind, but the kind that anchors your soul. It forces you to release your grip on your own plans and place your hands in His. It strips away pride. It reminds you, sometimes painfully, that you are not in control. And believe it or not, that's exactly where God wants you. Not leaning on your own understanding, not drawing strength from your own resources, but learning to rest in His strength, His timing, and His sovereignty. Think of Joseph, betrayed, falsely accused, and forgotten in prison. He spent years in confinement before he ever stepped into his destiny. Think of Moses, who waited not just a few weeks or months, but 40 years in the wilderness before God called him to lead Israel. And what about Jesus? The Son of God Himself waited 30 years before stepping into His public ministry. If they had to wait, if God's chosen had to endure years of silence and preparation, why should we expect anything different? God is never in a hurry, but He is always on time. That's not just a comforting phrase, it's a spiritual truth. The real question is not if God will fulfill His promises. The question is, will you trust Him while you wait? Will you remain faithful when progress is invisible? Will you keep praying when the answers don't arrive right away? Will you believe that He knows best, even when His timing doesn't make sense to you? Sign number 3, a call to deeper faith. And here it is, the next sign that God is preparing you for something greater, a call to deeper faith. Let's be honest, faith is easy when life is easy, when everything's going according to plan, when the bills are paid, the relationships are thriving, and the doors are opening. In those moments, trusting God feels natural, almost effortless. But what happens when the doors stay shut? when the diagnosis doesn't change, when the silence stretches on. That right there is when faith is truly tested. And that is when God calls you to go deeper. But let's be clear, a call to deeper faith is rarely a gentle whisper. It's often a challenge. It's not presented in a cozy environment. It shows up in the storm, in the dark, in the unknown. It's when God asks you to trust Him beyond what you can see, beyond what makes sense, beyond the safety of logic. It's the moment you realize something vital. Faith is not a feeling. It's obedience. Faith doesn't depend on understanding everything. It depends on trusting the one who does. Peter on the water. Remember Peter stepping out of the boat. As long as his eyes were fixed on Jesus, he did the unthinkable. He walked on water. He defied logic. He defied fear. He did the impossible. But the moment he shifted his focus, the moment his attention moved from Jesus to the wind and the waves, he began to sink. That's the nature of faith. It's fragile when it depends on feelings, but when rooted in trust, it becomes powerful beyond measure. When God calls you to deeper faith, He's not asking you to ignore the storm. He's asking you to see past it, to fix your eyes on Him through it, the end of yourself. And maybe right now, you're at the end of yourself. You've tried everything. You've prayed, pushed, planned, and still nothing. There's nothing left to lean on. Except God. Let me tell you something. That moment is not your defeat. It's your invitation. Because the moment you stop relying on yourself and start leaning fully on God, that's when your faith becomes real. Faith. Without a map, remember Abraham. God called him to leave behind everything, his home, his security, his familiarity. And He didn't hand him a map, no 5-year plan, no bullet points. Just, go to the land I will show you. No GPS, just obedience, and Abraham obeyed. He walked by faith, not by sight. That's the kind of faith God is calling you to. Sometimes deeper faith means continuing to believe, even when the miracle hasn't come. It means praying for healing while still feeling the pain. It means holding on to God's promise, even when all you see is desert. Faith that stands in the fire, it's the kind of faith that says, even if I don't see it yet, I still believe. Even if I don't understand, I still trust. Even if He doesn't deliver me the way I expected, I will not bow to fear. Think about Job. He lost everything, his wealth, his family, his health. And still, he refused to curse God. Why? Because his faith wasn't built on blessings. It was built on who God was, the faith God desires. That's the faith God wants to cultivate in you. Not a shallow faith that depends on results, but a deep, unshakable trust that can withstand the storm. Faith that stands in the fire. Faith that endures in silence. Faith that declares, even if He does not deliver me, I will not give up. That kind of faith doesn't just get rewarded, it gets refined, it gets remembered, it gets used for something greater than you can imagine. So yes, deeper faith is not built in moments of ease. It's forged in trials, matured in silence, and proven when you keep believing, even when nothing makes sense. And often, that deeper faith comes through testing. Faith, tested, strength refined. A call to deeper faith will almost always lead you into places that stretch your trust. God will allow you to face situations where you have no choice but to depend on Him. Not because He delights in watching you struggle, but because He wants to strengthen you beyond anything you thought possible. He's not just trying to build belief, He's forging unshakable trust. He wants you to know Him not just as the God who provides, but as the one who sustains you, even when the provision hasn't come yet. He wants you to know Him not only as a healer when healing comes, but as the one who holds you together in the middle of the pain, the one who walks beside you when the answer hasn't arrived, the one who is enough, all by Himself. What faith really looks like. Faith is not just believing that God exists. Even the enemy believes that. No, faith is trusting God enough to follow Him even when it's hard. It's stepping out of the boat when the waves are high and the wind is wild. It's walking forward when the path ahead is blurry, uncertain, and unfamiliar. It's releasing your grip on control and praying, "Lord, I don't understand, but I trust you." When God calls you to deeper faith, He's not asking for perfection. He's asking for surrender. He's not asking you to rely on your own strength. He's asking you to lean fully, completely, entirely on His. Because real faith isn't measured by how much you can do. It's measured by how much you're willing to trust that He will do what He's promised. Sign number 4, opportunities to serve others. Now we come to the next sign that God is preparing you for something greater. He gives you opportunities to serve others. This is a spiritual principle that many people overlook. Before God pours into your life, He often asks you to pour into others. Before He blesses you, He calls you to be a blessing. The world teaches us to chase status, to climb ladders, to look out for ourselves. But God's way is different, radically different. He teaches that the greatest among us is the one who serves. Divine assignments, disguised as small acts. Opportunities to serve are not just random acts of kindness. They are divine assignments. They are spiritual tests, moments when God is shaping your heart, testing your character, and preparing you for more. Before He gives you greater influence, He watches how you steward what's in your hands right now. Before He elevates you to leadership, He watches how you respond to small opportunities to help those around you, how you treat those who can't repay you, what you do when no one is watching. The example of Joseph. Look again at the life of Joseph. He had a powerful dream, one where God would raise him to leadership, where others would bow before him. But before the dream came true, he was placed in situations where he had to serve. First in Potiphar's house, as a slave, then in prison, as a forgotten inmate. He didn't protest. He didn't complain that he was above the job. He didn't see service as beneath him. He served faithfully, even in pain, even in obscurity, even when it looked like the dream was dead. And because Joseph was faithful in low places, God promoted him to high places. What about us? The same is true for us. We often pray for promotion, for blessings, for more. But God looks at how we handle what we already have. He watches to see, do we serve when it's inconvenient? Do we give when no one else is watching? Do we offer kindness even when we receive none in return? Do we step outside our comfort zones to help someone in need? These are the real tests, and they reveal whether we are ready for the next level. The greatest example, of course, our greatest example is Jesus Himself. He had all power, all authority. He could have demanded anything, and yet He chose to serve. He knelt down and washed His disciples' feet. He dined with the rejected. He wept with the broken. He spent time with the outcasts. He didn't just talk about love, He demonstrated it, and now He calls us to do the same. Because in God's kingdom, greatness isn't measured by how many people serve you. It's measured by how many people you serve. Sometimes it's about us. Sometimes God puts people in our path, not because they need us, but because we need them. Because through serving, we learn compassion. Through giving, we learn gratitude. Through showing up for someone else, we become more like Christ. So if today you feel unnoticed, if you're wondering when your big moment will come, ask yourself this: what opportunities has God already placed in front of me to serve, to bless, to love? Because the way you handle those small, quiet moments may be the key to unlocking the very thing you've been praying for. When we serve others, we're not just helping them, we're being shaped ourselves. Because sometimes the breakthrough we're praying for comes through the lives we're willing to touch. The heart-shaping power of serving. There's a lesson we often miss, one that doesn't come from receiving, but from giving. The growth. that transforms us sometimes happens not in the spotlight, but in the quiet acts of kindness we offer to others, without expecting anything in return. We need that kind of growth. We need to learn that serving isn't a burden, it's a privilege, because something powerful happens when you serve. Something shifts inside you. Your heart becomes softer, your vision becomes clearer. You begin to see people, not through the lens of judgment or indifference, but through the eyes of Christ. You start to understand a profound truth. Life isn't just about what you can get, it's about what you can give. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more you pour into others, the more God pours into you. There are blessings, real, tangible blessings, attached to serving. Not because we earn God's favor through good deeds, but because serving aligns us with His heart. When you give, you receive. When you lift others, God lifts you. When you make yourself available to bless someone else, God blesses you in ways you couldn't have predicted. Is it always convenient? No. Is it always easy? Definitely not. But each opportunity to serve is also an opportunity to grow, to mature, to step 1 inch closer to the calling God has placed on your life. It's a chance to become His hands, His feet, His heart, in a world starving for love and compassion. And when you embrace that lifestyle, when you choose to live a life of service, you don't just help others. You position yourself to receive the very blessings God's been preparing for you all along. Sign number 5, letting go of the past. Now we come to another sign that God is preparing you for something greater, and it's one of the hardest to face. Letting go of the past. Because the past has a strange way of holding on, doesn't it? It creeps into our thoughts. It whispers in the quiet moments. It tells us stories of what was, what could have been, or what should have been different. Some days, it feels like you're carrying invisible baggage, burdens that weigh down your spirit, memories that drain your energy, wounds that never fully closed. But if God is preparing to take you somewhere new, He will eventually call you to let go of what's behind. Why? Because there are things in your past that simply cannot go with you into your future. Old relationships, toxic habits, outdated mindsets, even emotions that once served a purpose, but are now keeping you stuck. God might be asking you to surrender these things, not because they didn't matter, but because they're no longer part of what He's doing in your life. You can't step into what's next while still dragging the weight of yesterday. Holding on keeps you bound. Letting go creates space for healing, for freedom, for newness. Think of Lot's wife. When God rescued her from destruction, He gave one simple command: don't look back. But she did. She turned around, longing for what she was leaving behind. And in that moment, she lost everything. That's what happens when we cling to the past. It robs us of the future God is trying to lead us into. Breaking free from the past. Some people are still holding on to past mistakes, living under the heavy shadow of guilt, shame, and regret. The enemy loves to use that as a weapon. He'll remind you of every failure, every wrong decision, every sin, and whisper, "You're unworthy of God's blessings." But that is a lie. God's grace is greater than your past. His mercy is bigger than your mistakes. If He has forgiven you, then you must learn to forgive yourself. Stop letting shame chain you to a moment God already redeemed. You're not defined by what you did. You're defined by who He says you are. Others are holding on to past hurts. Someone betrayed you. Someone abandoned you. Someone hurt you deeply. And even though time has passed, the pain still lingers. But if you don't release that hurt, it becomes a prison. Unforgiveness doesn't punish the one who wronged you. It punishes you. It keeps you chained to the very thing God wants to set you free from. Letting go doesn't mean what happened was okay. It doesn't erase the pain. It simply means this: God, I trust you with it now. I refuse to let this bitterness steal my joy or my future. And then there are those who are clinging to past successes. Yes, even the good things can hold us back. Some are afraid to step forward, not because they're hurting, but because they're comfortable. The success of yesterday has become a safety net, a cozy, familiar place that feels secure. But sometimes, the good things of the past can keep us from the great things God has ahead. God doesn't want you to get stuck in what was. He's calling you forward, into what can be. Forward is the only way. So the question is, what are you still holding on to that God has already told you to release? An old mistake, a buried wound, a former success, whatever it is. Letting go is not a sign of weakness. It's an act of faith. It's a declaration that says, God, I trust your future more than I trust my past, because the road ahead requires empty hands and an open heart. Letting go isn't always a one-time act. Sometimes it's a daily decision to release the past and move forward with faith, because what God has for you isn't behind you, it's ahead, pressing toward. What's ahead, God is always calling us higher. He's always leading us deeper. And the blessings He has for you, listen closely, they are not just in your rearview mirror. They're in front of you. They're still to come. The Apostle Paul captured it perfectly when he said, "Forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal." That is the mindset God wants you to carry. A mind focused forward, a heart rooted in hope, a spirit that believes what's ahead is far greater than anything left behind. Yes, it takes faith, especially when we can't see the full picture. But faith isn't about understanding every step. It's about trusting that God is working all things together for good, even when we don't yet see how. Letting go of the past is rarely a one-and-done moment. Often, it's a decision we have to make again, every single day. Every day you wake up and say, God, I give it to you again. I'm choosing to move forward. Every day you refuse to look back. You remind yourself, He's doing a new thing, and I don't want to miss it by clinging to what's over. Because here's the truth. God cannot pour new blessings into hands that are still clinging tightly to old things. He can't lead you into the next season if your heart is still living in the last one. Yes, the past happened, but it's over. What's done can't be undone. But what God has for you, it's still ahead. And if you are willing to let go, if you're willing to trust Him, you will step into a future that is bigger, better, and more beautiful than anything you had before. New doors, opening unexpectedly. There comes a point in your journey where, after all the waiting, after all the trials, something shifts. A new door begins to open, sometimes when you least expect it. Maybe you've been in a place where you feel stuck. Every door around you seems closed. You've prayed for direction. You've done all you know to do, but nothing seems to move. You've knocked, you've waited, you've even pushed, and still, silence. But it's in those very moments, the ones that feel dry, discouraging, and directionless, that God is often working behind the scenes. He's preparing to open new doors in ways you didn't plan, through paths you never imagined. When God moves, it's not always the way we envision. He doesn't always follow our timelines. He rarely takes the route we would have chosen. But here's what's certain. He is never late. And when the time is right, He opens the right door at the right moment. God is not limited by your circumstances. He's not restricted by human logic. He's not confined by closed doors. The doors He opens, no man can shut. And when it's truly your time, you won't have to force anything. You won't need to manipulate, chase, or strive. The door will swing open because He opened it. Maybe you've been knocking on doors that just won't budge. Maybe you've been striving, pushing, pleading, only to face resistance again and again. But when it's God's door, you won't have to fight your way in. He'll lead you through it with peace, clarity, and perfect timing. Sometimes we're so focused on what isn't working, we miss the new thing God is trying to do. We pray for a specific outcome. We hope for a certain opportunity. And when it doesn't happen our way, we assume God isn't listening. But what if He's guiding you to something better? What if the closed doors weren't rejections, but redirections? What if what didn't happen was actually His protection? Joseph's story, a setup, not a setback. Look at Joseph. He never expected that the path to his destiny would begin in a pit. He didn't ask to be betrayed by his brothers. He didn't deserve to be sold into slavery. He didn't plan to be falsely accused or thrown into prison. If you had asked him in those moments, he probably would have said, "This isn't what I signed up for. My life is going in the wrong direction." But every step, every painful, unfair, lonely step was leading him to exactly where God wanted him. What looked like detours were actually divine direction. The doors that appeared to close on him were actually guiding him straight to the palace. God often moves in ways that don't make sense at first. He allows plans to shift. He allows people to walk away. He allows structures to fall apart. Not to harm you, but to position you. So maybe right now it feels like you're losing. Maybe it feels like everything is unraveling. But what if you're not falling apart? What if you're being repositioned? What if the opportunity you were chasing wasn't too big for you, but actually too small for the future God had in mind? Ruth's story. The door she didn't expect. Take Ruth, for example. She didn't expect her life to be upended. She didn't plan to lose her husband. She had no intention of leaving everything behind and following her mother-in-law into an unfamiliar land. But she did. Without knowing what the future held, she obeyed. She walked through a door that didn't look like opportunity. It looked like loss. It looked like surrender. But behind that unexpected door was her destiny. A future she couldn't have imagined. One that led her into the lineage of Jesus himself. Final thought. So if the path in front of you looks unfamiliar, if the doors behind you have slammed shut, don't panic, don't despair. Look up. Because God may be opening a new door. And it might not look like you expected, but it will lead you exactly where you're meant to be. Sometimes the door God opens won't look anything like the one you were waiting for. But if you keep walking in faith, just like Ruth, you'll find that what He has prepared is more beautiful than anything you imagined. Ruth and the unexpected door. Ruth didn't know where her steps would lead. She didn't know that choosing to stay faithful, to keep moving forward despite the pain and loss, would position her in the exact place where her destiny would begin. She found herself in the field of Boaz. She stepped into a future she never saw coming. She walked through a door she hadn't planned, and suddenly God's plan started to unfold in her life. That's how it often happens. When God opens a new door, it rarely comes with flashing lights or perfect clarity. It usually comes with a choice. Will you step forward in faith? Will you move even when it doesn't fully make sense? The door may not look like what you expected. The path might feel unfamiliar. But if you trust Him, if you're willing to release your own expectations, you'll find yourself stepping into blessings you never imagined. The enemy's distraction. But here's the catch. The enemy wants to distract you. He wants to keep you focused on what isn't happening. He wants your thoughts chained to every door that didn't open, to every prayer that hasn't been answered, to every disappointment that still stings. He wants you to believe it will always be like this, that you're stuck, that nothing will change, that the delay means denial. But don't believe the lie, because God is always working. He is always moving, even when you can't see it, even when your heart feels tired and your hope feels small. When the right door opens when the time is right, God's time, not ours. He will open a door so clearly, so powerfully, that nothing and no one will be able to shut it. Your role is not to force that door open. You don't need to manipulate the moment. You don't need to make it happen with your own strength. Your job is to stay faithful, to keep showing up, to keep praying, to keep trusting, to keep believing. And when that door opens, you will know it was not your own doing. You will look back and realize every delay was divine. Every closed door was protection. Every detour was leading me straight to where I was meant to be. Because when God opens a door, no one can close it. And when He leads you through it, He doesn't just bring you in. He prepares you to stay there. He equips you for the blessing. He makes sure your heart is ready. He's not just opening a door, He's setting the stage for purpose to unfold. Sign number 7, a renewed sense of peace and trust. And this leads us to the final sign that God is preparing you for something greater, a renewed sense of peace and trust. There comes a time in every believer's journey when the weight of worry becomes too much to carry, when the fear, the anxiety, the constant questions begin to drain your spirit, cloud your mind, and leave you empty. But listen carefully. God never intended for you to live that way. He never designed you to carry burdens that only He can bear. So, when He's preparing you to receive His blessings, one of the first things He does is lead you back into peace. Not a peace that's dependent on perfect circumstances, but a peace that exists in the middle of the storm. Peace in the middle of the storm. Peace is not the absence of trouble. It's not the absence of chaos, of hardship, of challenges. Peace is the presence of God in the middle of it all. Remember what Jesus said, "In this world, you will have trouble." He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't promise a life without difficulty. But He did follow that statement with a powerful promise. Take heart. I have overcome the world. That's where true peace is found. Not in knowing how every situation will unfold, but in knowing that God is in control no matter what happens. Learning to trust. Again now, trusting God doesn't come naturally for most of us. It's not automatic. It's not something you just say once and master forever. It's something that is built over time, something that grows with experience. Many people say they trust God, but the real test comes when life falls apart, when the answer doesn't come, when the waiting feels unbearable, when every door remains closed. That's when trust becomes more than a word. That's when it becomes a choice. Abraham's trust in the unknown. Think about Abraham. He was called to leave everything, his home, his family, his familiar surroundings, and God didn't give him a detailed map. He simply said, "Go to the land I will show you." No road signs, no schedule, just a command and a promise. And Abraham went, not because he had the whole picture, but because he had enough trust to take the first step. That's what God is asking of you. Peace and trust, the mark of what's coming. So if you've been feeling a shift, a strange calm in the middle of confusion, a quiet strength rising even while things around you look uncertain, that may not be your imagination. It may be a sign, because when God is preparing you for something greater, He often begins by renewing your peace and restoring your trust, not in the outcome, but in Him. So yes, peace and trust aren't something we stumble into. They're cultivated, grown, strengthened through the journey. And one of the most powerful ways that trust is built is by stepping into the unknown. Abraham's journey of trust. Think back to Abraham. He didn't have all the answers. He wasn't given a roadmap or a timeline. All he had was a command from God and the courage to obey. And yet, even without clarity, he walked in faith. And every step he took, no matter how uncertain, was met with God's faithfulness. With each provision, Abraham's peace grew deeper. With each answered prayer, his trust became stronger. That same truth applies to you. The more you trust God, the more peace you will experience. The more you surrender your fears, the more freedom you'll begin to feel. Because here's the reality. Worry thrives when we try to control what was never ours to carry. But when you place those fears into God's hands, when you declare, Lord, I trust you no matter what. That's when you'll discover a peace that surpasses understanding. The nature of God's peace, this kind of peace isn't shallow. It's not the kind that disappears the moment something goes wrong. It isn't based on smooth sailing or everything going your way. It's not built on getting answers or seeing immediate results. True peace is rooted in the unchanging nature of God. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. If He has been faithful before, He will be faithful again. If He has provided in the past, He will provide in the future. If He has brought you through the valley before, He will do it again. You can rest in that. Peter's step of faith. Remember Peter in the boat with the other disciples. He saw Jesus walking on water, and with a burst of faith, he stepped out of the boat. And as long as his eyes were on Jesus, he walked. He did the impossible. He defied logic. He moved by faith. But the moment his focus shifted, when he looked at the wind, the waves, the chaos around him, fear took over, and he began to sink. Isn't that exactly what happens to us? When we fix our eyes on God, we find strength and peace. But when we shift our attention to the circumstances, to the storm, fear creeps in, peace slips away. But here's the beauty of the story. Even as Peter sank, he cried out, and immediately, Jesus reached out and lifted him up. That's what God does for you, even when your trust wavers, even when you fall, even when you struggle. He's still there, hand outstretched, ready to pull you back. Peace and trust take time. A renewed sense of peace and trust isn't built overnight. It's developed over time, through trials, through quiet surrender, through choosing to rest in God's promises, even when the plan doesn't make sense. It's shaped through prayer, strengthened through worship, deepened by daily decisions, to believe that God is working, even when you can't see it. Because when you stop striving to control every outcome, when you simply rest in the presence of God, you'll realize something powerful, that peace was available all along. That trust doesn't require all the answers. It just requires knowing that God has them, and that's enough. God's process of preparation. When God is preparing you to receive His blessings, He doesn't rush the process. He takes you through it, step by step, not to harm you, but to shape you. He allows challenges and trials to refine your character. He leads you through waiting seasons, to teach you patience and dependence on His timing. He calls you to deeper faith, to stretch you beyond comfort, so you learn to walk by trust, not by sight. He gives you opportunities to serve, to test your heart and prepare you for greater responsibilities. He asks you to let go of the past, freeing you from burdens that would hold you back. He opens new doors in ways you didn't expect, reminding you that He is the one who directs your path. And through all of it, He renews your peace and trust, teaching you to rest in Him no matter what comes. Every piece has purpose. Every trial, every delay, every unanswered prayer, none of it is wasted. It's all part of God's greater plan, a process of preparation, protection, and positioning. So if you find yourself in the middle of that process right now, if it feels quiet, uncertain, maybe even painful, don't lose heart. Don't let fear or doubt convince you that nothing is happening, because God is always working, even when you can't see it. He's aligning things behind the scenes. He's molding your heart. He's clearing the path. And when the moment is right, His moment, not yours, He will release the blessing He's been preparing for you all along. Final encouragement. So what should you do while you wait? Trust Him. Stay faithful. Keep believing. Because what God has ahead is greater than anything you've left behind.